the public has just turned itself away from the Conservative Party, and very little out there is changing the public opinion that they're ready for a change, even though compared to 97, and we're now talking, according to this poll, to a landslide on a par with Tony Blair's, there is nothing like the public enthusiasm for the Labour Party that there was back in 97. What there is greater public distaste.
I think it's very relevant, isn't it, to try and have a long view for a situation like this, because it's not the first time that a British Prime Minister has had to face very difficult decisions about arms and about aids and about conflict. So that delicate line that's being tread by Rishi Sunak at the moment, how well do you think he's doing?
Well, he has two things going for him. The first is that Parliament is not sitting at the moment, so he won't face immediate pressures. It doesn't get back until the middle of this month, by which time some of the anger and shock at the killing of the British aid workers working for World Kitchen may have receded. The second thing is that, frankly, the opposition, or the main opposition, the Labour Party, don't really have any other ideas. The reason being that the government and the opposition have accepted the right of Israel to defend itself. And so within that, defence cooperation with an ally is logical. I think the big problem is that this thing in Gaza seems to be getting out of control now. We have to remember that the humanitarian situation, the potential starvation, is man-made. It's been caused by the Israeli attack, that Israel appears not to be facilitating land supplies of aid into the situation which is created, and now it's been targeting an aid convoy, although it says that was apparently some sort of oversight or mistake. And meanwhile, the whole assault on Gaza is continuing, with people wondering, well, what is the end game? Could the end game be, as Israel's critics have suggested, a kind of genocide, of pushing the Palestinians out of Israeli territory? Certainly that's what some on the right in Israeli politics are saying. So it's a fantastically awkward situation for Israel's allies, led by the United States. But as far as the military exports are concerned, Britain exports very, very little to Israel, a fraction of a percent of Israel's defense imports, and mainly that is components going to equipment being assembled in the United States. And I think, although the Liberal Democrats have called for this, it's very unlikely that we're going to see Britain withdrawing supplying those parts to the United States, because that is our most important ally in this conflict at the moment. And we know that both President Biden and indeed Rishi Sunak are pretty much going to the end of their tether with Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel.
Realistically, where is our power on this particular stage? Does it lie in us being alongside America, or do we actually wield some kind of power, just as Britain?
I think we wield very little as far as trying to not necessarily impose sanctions, although remember that America has imposed some sanctions on settlers are concerned. Actually, rather than stopping our defense exports to Israel, we could do them more direct damage by stopping our imports from Israel. They are considerably more. I mean, hundreds of millions a year we buy from Israel, a lot of high-tech weaponry, compared to a few tens of millions that we export every year. So if we were to stop that, that would immediately stop money going to Israel defense industry, which is basically state-owned. So going to the Israeli government, and might make their lives a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. Can I ask you a difficult question, Adam? There is just something a tiny bit distasteful about any change in tone that comes from any leader when some people, some citizens, are killed in a conflict like this, when so many citizens of that conflict are being killed on a daily basis. Do you think that Rishi has handled that well?
I think we can't really criticize the British government, because, like the Americans, for several weeks now, they've been saying, look, this is going too far, and asking Israel to show restraint and asking Israel also to show more commitment to the peace talks that have been going on in Egypt and Doha and other locations. So I appreciate what you're saying. You're saying, when it hurts us, we care, and when it hurts other people, we care less. But I think within the basic conundrum of the UK government being fundamentally supportive of Israel and its right to defend itself following those attacks on October the 7th, I think diplomatically it's been handled quite well. And interestingly, David Cameron, Lord Cameron, since he's come back into the government as Foreign Secretary, he has been taking a stronger line in terms of asking for restraint from Israel and looking towards the interests of the Palestinians than had been taken previously.
Okay. We're going to move on to something else. This is just out on the Times website, so I know that you won't have had a huge amount of time to digest it all either. But it's seat-by-seat data gathered by YouGov. It's a very detailed MRP poll by YouGov that tells us some pretty astonishing facts and figures, actually looking ahead to the general election. Rishi Sunak's party would face 210 losses. 11 cabinet ministers would go, including Jeremy Hunt. Labour winning 41% of the vote, so not as high as 1997. Are your eyebrows up in your hairline because of this, Adam, or are you thinking, yep, that's pretty much the direction of travel?
Well, I'm afraid it's a rapidly receding hairline, but the answer is they're not, simply because we have seen similar polls like this in recent weeks. There was the famous one done for the Telegraph by a group surround Lord Frost, which was also an MRP poll, which, as you say, looks more constituency by constituency than on uniform swing. And that also was pointing to a landslide defeat and the possibility that there could actually, in a House of Commons of 650, be less than 100 Labour Conservative MPs after the election. Now, most psephologists, if you speak to them, will say, well, we still expect there'll be a narrowing in the polls. But this just simply confirms that at the moment, as Professor Sir John Curtis says, 99%, Keir Starmer is going to form the next government and the Conservatives are going to be absolutely thumped. And that, of course, will raise the questions in some of them during their Easter holidays as to whether changing to another Prime Minister would make a difference, whether there will be a move against Rishi Sunak or not. But the reality appears to be, and it's now been 2 years since really the fall of started of Boris Johnson over Partygate, that the public has just turned itself away from the Conservative Party, and very little out there is changing the public opinion that they're ready for a change, even though compared to 97, and we're now talking, according to this poll, to a landslide on a par with Tony Blair's, there is nothing like the public enthusiasm for the Labour Party that there was back in 97. What there is greater public distaste for the Conservative government now than there was for the John Major government.
It's very true. It's a really different atmosphere out there, isn't it? Adam, it's lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. That's Adam Boulton. He's back on Times Radio on Sunday.